Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. August 7th. Where has summer gone, Duane?
Well, we still got almost a month and a half left of it. I'm a summer truther. I believe summer ends on the 21st of September, not September 1st, like some people.
Especially nowadays, right? Tornado warnings in Quebec yesterday. You never see those things. I guess Florida is coming to us. We don't have to go to it anymore. Yeah, climate change is actually true. But this is not a climate change show. This is a soccer show. And a few interesting topics today. We'll talk about the LAFC Minnesota trade a bit later. We'll talk about Barca's 3-match internal ban, and Tata Martino talking about this yesterday in practice. We'll talk about Jonathan Osorio and as well FC Cincinnati with a big number, the amount of season tickets already sold. But let's start with Ballou. Ballou has been in training camp with the first team of Barcelona this last month, and he's actually been playing really well, has been influential in a lot of goals we've seen Barca do in the International Champions Cup. My question to you, Duane, will Ballou make Barcelona's first team?
That'd be certainly surprising if he did, but what I will say to it is that, and I said this when I was talking about Alphonso Davies, is I think we have this tendency in this part of the country to go, oh, you can't go to a big club because you might not play. Well, what if you do? You know?
What if he does?
So
yeah,
it's
true.
Yeah, the fact that we're talking about this is remarkable. And look, we all have a reluctance to completely embrace this kid just yet because of his possibilities with the East Ivory Coast, right? So there is that. But putting that aside and just looking at this as someone developing this system, I think it is an exciting thing that this is a kid that's very close to playing and you know, one of the top 1A and 1B biggest clubs in the world, most famous clubs in the world. So yeah, this is something that is unheard of in this part of the country, and he was the one that was less fancy than Davies too. So this is it's pretty surprising, pretty special, and we've got some rumblings on that front too. So so maybe cross our fingers.
He had difficulty making the first team for Montreal, not necessarily because of a lack of talent or a lack of work ethic or a lack of anything, but for me it was maybe a lack of confidence from people higher than him in either Mauro Biello back then, or higher than Mauro Biello, or maybe it's just we want to win, but play the kids. Play the kids was not something a year and a half ago when Ballou left for Barcelona B. The thing is, Alphonso Davies and Ballou is a very similar story. If Ballou would have stayed with Montreal and played the way Davies did in the last year, he would have been sold for a 10, 12, 13 million, whatever the case may be. And yes, it was a 1 point something million, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, to Barcelona B. But what could have been? Montreal could have been an amazing situation with the amount of money they could spend if they would have been a bit more lenient with him when he was playing. But let's not underestimate his progression since he has joined Barcelona B. Or Barcelona. He has been training with the first squad a few times last year, and this time so far all the time. And you do see a progression in his confidence, in his play, in his ability. And we all saw Duane Ballou play on 1v1, 1v2, and be able to shake those defenders like they're just water on a duck's back. Just get rid of them and then be influential and generate scoring chances in those famous expected goal statistics. And I do feel Ballou has grown leaps and bounds over the last few weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's often in the 18 on the bench and then has good ways to play.
Yeah, well, I think anyone. I mean, hell, you could put me in the Barcelona training sessions for a year. Just, if it didn't kill me, which might, I'd probably improve my game too. Just, my ceiling's a little lower. But in this particular kid's case, you take an immense amount of talent, and that's about a creative talent, and you put them in that kind of environment and allow them to thrive, and I think you see what you see. You see this exposure, this growth, and there's a couple different things there. I do think that there is a reluctance to play kids in North America that's based on North American mentality. Most sports in North America that we follow closely, if you don't, you have to earn your place over the veteran, right? You have to almost be twice as good unless you're like another worldly Connor McDavid kind of player, right? That's a hockey player, in case you were not familiar with it, folks. But nonetheless, you usually have to have that otherworldly kind of talent. Otherwise, you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to play a couple of years in the minors. You're going to have to play a couple of years on the bottom lines of your teams, a couple of years on the bench, whatever. There's reluctance to do that, even if the talent sort of suggests otherwise. The other thing I think you see with players like Ballou and Davies, for that matter, what is their greatest strength? And you look at both these kids, they have similarities in the sense that they're both amazing on the ball. They both can take players on one-on-one. They can both dribble past players. Davies leads MLS by double or something on dribbles. It's like that's his category. If you want to look at the advanced stats, he beats people on the ball all the time. That's a skill that's almost drilled out of kids in North America because they're, showboating or something.
Oh, it's about the team.
Like
yeah, don't show off. Don't showboat. Don't make your teammates look bad, or don't make whatever. That's what it's all about. Players on the ball,
yeah.
And that's a testament to Davies and Ballou in this instance. The work they did put on the ball since they were kids. Practicing by themselves, not necessarily just by themselves, but I mean outside of structured play or structured training. That's when you need to get time on the ball to actually perfect your technique on the ball and have time to discover. And it's when you play around, when you just walk down the street with a ball at your feet. That's often one of the techniques that coach will say, just walk around the house with the ball at your feet and you'll discover something. You'll discover something that works for you and work with that. And Ballou, as much as his time in Montreal did not necessarily finish in the best way, I can only imagine what could have been if Rémi Garde had him this year. We've seen Rémi Garde not being afraid to play players like Ken Krolicki, which shows him the work ethic and talent and a lot of potential. Ballou would have probably be one of the best players of Montreal right now if he was under Rémi Garde, but we're just talking about what ifs here. But I do feel it's fascinating, the growth of Ballou over the last year, 18 months, and the possibilities that he actually might make Barcelona's team and might be good too at the Barcelona level.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, of course, Barca too. They got relegated last year, so they're not in as high a league as I think Barca would like them to be in. So they might put him on that roster and then loan him out to another La Liga team, another team in the Liga just below. I always forget the name of it, but the second tier in Spain.
Liga 2, Segundo, Liga Segundo, or something.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, my Spanish is lacking in this particular case. No, but that might happen too, and that might be why he makes this roster. But it's still remarkable, regardless of what happens, right? If he's getting regular playing time on a top-level second-tier Spanish team or on a bottom of the Liga team, that's an accomplishment too. I mean, we used to lose our mind over Julian de Guzman playing for a yo-yo team in Spain, right? So this is they didn't yo-yo when they were with them. Actually, they were pretty decent, but nonetheless, it would be a remarkable accomplishment. And look. Well, we lost our mind over a Petit playing, in the third tier.
Yeah.
So it's Petit. It's a great accomplishment. Petit means small, folks. I don't know why I'm talking today. Is it Monday or is it Tuesday, Kevin?
It's Tuesday.
It's Monday here.
We apologize for the audio of Duane. It's the best we could do today. There's a bit of scratching noise, so I apologize for that. But when we do look at the potential, even for the Canadian men's national team, and now we're not saying it's going to happen. We're not saying anything. This is pure speculation and rumors. But there's a certain rumbling that is starting to appear now that if Ballou gets called for maybe one of those Nations League games, maybe he'll answer the call.
Yeah, there was some very loud rumors last month that suggested that they'd already had this communication and that he said he would accept a call. I don't know. This part of this, I think, might be that there's a belief that these won't cap tie him. And there's no indication one way or the other whether these League of Nations games are going to cap tie. I think down the line they might, because they will be qualifiers for a Gold Cup, but that's not official yet because this is a qualifier for the League of Nations. It's a classification game, really, to see what division it starts in. So I think once the real competition starts, they will be cap tieable. But right now, they're essentially just friendly pluses. So in which case, if he does come and have a look at the program, that will still allow him to make a one-time switch to the Ivory Coast if he wishes. So he's willing to do this. But even if that is the case, and I think it's a positive sign that he's willing to come in, and you'd have to think that the 2026 bid, winning that would have played the most significant role of that, as would maybe having a player like Alphonso Davies and seeing him, be signed by a club like Byron, and you look at the talent level and you start to look at how realistic it is that you're going to jump into the Ivory Coast first team and whether they are going to make a World Cup, and you start to do the math in your head, and it might just be more likely that you play in a World Cup for Canada than Côte d'Ivoire. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of stuff going on. I'm count chickens hatch, hold the shirt up at the press conference, all those sort of cliches, but certainly this is the first positive things we've been hearing about this in a while, and I don't want to speculate too much on whether it's wishful thinking or not, but certainly I've been hearing it from places that I haven't in the past, which makes me think there might be some smoke there.
And maybe the arrival of John Herdman and the long-term plan that John Herdman seems to have for the Canadian men's national team. Added to this, the presence of Alphonso Davies and Samuel Piette, and other players like Samuel Piette, which are young in age, really, really wise for their age, especially in experience, and dominating midfield in Major League Soccer. Samuel Piette, quickly, this is not on the topics, but Samuel Piette is now becoming a player that other teams actually plan around and make sure they want to stifle is either distribution going forward or able to isolate him so he doesn't become the sentinel right in front of the defense and being really useful there. When it goes through the midfield and it's through Samuel Piette and he finds a Tider or finds a Piatti, we do see the progression forward and then Montreal becoming more dangerous. So with the presence of a few players like this, the future of the Canadian men's national team could really be bright, and this could help Ballou make a decision. It's pure speculation, but we hope that it goes in this way.
My kingdom for a defender at this point when it comes to the Canadian men's national team. I like a lot of that young talent. And, you didn't mention a guy like Marc-Anthony Kaye in there either, right? Like, there's a lot of young, good players right now. Jonathan Rosario, who we'll talk about in a minute, who's kind of in that middle, going to be in a leadership role in this next round. It's a nice-looking team right now. Not as deep as I'd like, but, beggars, choosers and all that. If we can find a couple of center halves, maybe 2022 is not that crazy, at least to get to the final qualifying round.
Well, yeah, maybe we can actually get to the Hex, and at that point, who knows? It's almost a crapshoot to get to the Hex. Who knows? But that could be interesting. You were mentioning Jonathan Rosario, and let's go there. Jonathan Rosario's contract is going to be up next year, but what I'm wondering is, with this performance this year and late last year, is he getting some look from outside of MLS? Maybe Liga MX, maybe a team like Besiktas, which we always like to Canadian players for some reason. That's because of the recent history of Besiktas, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Rosario is not necessarily finishing his contract in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, look, TFC actually came out on record on Rosario the other day. They have admitted that they'd like to sign him long term. They'd like to get him to a long, like a 4-year contract or something like that. But sort of then followed that up immediately by saying, "But we have lots of interest in him." And I don't necessarily think that they're blowing smoke in this particular case, because you look at the way he's played this year, and you in particular look how he played in the CCL and against the Liga MX teams that you'd have to think that in his style, I think, would really work down there. Very simple game, able to run into space, he passes the ball very well. There's this obsession within the TFC fan base, a certain segment of it that thinks he doesn't pass the ball well, and then you look at his passing stats and it's like 92%. So I don't know what the hell they're looking at. But anyway, nonetheless, that's my little rant there on the side. He's a player that I think is going to attract a little bit of interest there too. And then you factor that in with, what would it cost to sign Jonathan Rosario to an extension on this contract? And I think you're probably looking at TAM money at this particular point. And then you have to start asking yourself whether you want to sign Jonathan Rosario for TAM money. And I love Jonathan Rosario as a player. I think he's a great TFC story. Came in the dark days of 2013, was a real bright light in that 2013 season, scored, I think, 13 goals in total, sort of found a role that wasn't as flashy or exciting in the years that passed, was a key contributor to a championship team, and then really re-emerged again as a goal scorer once again this season. Whether it's an outlier, we don't know. We'll wait and see. But it's a nice story. It's a nice homegrown story, a true one, even though he didn't actually play his formative years in the club. Everyone knows that. Folks that are of the know out there and want to scream at me for that one. We know that he wasn't really a TFC homegrown player, but he came at a very young age, right? And he watched the team growing up. So it's a nice story. But you can't, when you run in a Major League Soccer team, you can't, run it on nice stories and good feelings. You have to run it on logic, and I don't know whether it's logical to spend PAM money on a player that plays Jonathan Rosario's role, particularly if you can turn around and sell him for $1.5 million or something, or $1 million or $500,000 even. You get a little money to spend to bring in a guy that might fill that role nicely next year. TFC is going to have an interesting offseason. I think there is going to have to be a bit of a turnover from the core of the double, the finalist champions, whatever the hell happens this year. That 3-year run, I think, is going to slightly turn over a little bit at the end of next year, and Jonathan Rosario is going to be one of those key components of that.
I think for all Canadian MLS teams, there's going to be a lot of turnover in the next transfer window in the offseason between 2018 and 2019. Vancouver, by necessity, with the potential departure of Kai Kamara. It's a 1-year contract that he has anyways. And, of course, Alphonso Davies. And you look at Montreal, there's a lot of potential turnover, too. Audero will not be back, and he will not be playing this year. So you have a lot of potential departures, Mancosu, and others that are probably on their way out in the next offseason. So, yeah, Canadian MLS teams will have a very different look when it comes to the 2019 season. Speaking of the 2018 season, though, a big trade happened late last night. Superman! No, he's not dead. He's alive. He came back in Justice League, but that's not what it's about. Superman is moving to LAFC. A bit of a surprise move for LAFC. Not that they were missing any strikers with Adamante Diomande. They were in a good position, but now they want to have more depth in that position, and it's a lot of money for Ramirez. Here is the breakdown of the amount of money. $250,000 general allocation money in both 2018 and 2019, so that's $500K. $100K in TAM for 2018, $200K in TAM in 2019, and a potential $200K in future allocation money based on player performances. That's a lot of money for Superman. Yes, Superman is worth it, but a player that has been identified literally with Minnesota for a long time, back in the NASL days, now going to LAFC.
Yeah, that was my first thought on it. It's surprised to see a player that was so associated to Minnesota, coming into this league, and they took a great deal of pride in the fact that they, this is a player that should have been in MLS longer, and we knew him, and he's ours, and he came and he succeeded, and they took a lot of pride in that. So they're truly, they're essentially, to use a TFC analogy here, they're trading Danny Vecchio, right? Like that's kind of something that's going to be a bit of a hit to their fans, particularly when they've been somewhat patient in this launch compared to the other expansion teams that have come in. They're better this year, and I think they deserve credit for being better this year, but they're still, not great. So yeah, it's hard to lose your fan favorites, and it's a kind of a, in essence, lost moment, I think, for that fan base. But it's a good type of player to add to LAFC, I think, too, on the other side of this equation. He offers sort of a different look, and this is a team that now is presenting itself, thinking about winning a title, and to add this type of talent, it makes sense for them to spend the money up front. So I think it's an interesting trade there. I'm curious what Minnesota does with the money, and maybe we should get one of the Minnesota boys on to talk about this, because that's got to be psychologically an interesting one for them to handle right now.
And in the same ball, not the same vein, but we're talking about Minnesota, a second-year team. Next year, we're going to have a brand new team as well. FC Cincinnati is joining Major League Soccer. Yes, they made big splash last week by getting Fernando Adi for their 2019 season. We'll see about this year. They're first in the USL as we speak. 25,000 season tickets, close to it, sold already for year one. That's like double the average in the entire MLS league if you take Atlanta away. It's like double the average. Or a team, when they get to 10,000 season tickets, are really happy. And then I'm talking about the majority of the team, the median team. Because you do have outliers. Portland, you do have Seattle, you do have as well Atlanta, like I'm mentioning, which their season ticket numbers are way higher. But Montreal Impact, around 8 to 9,000, depending of the year. A lot of teams is very similar or lower. 25,000 season tickets for FC Cincinnati for next year with the renovations of Nippert Stadium as well. This is going to be a success right off the bat, I believe.
Yeah, it's the new normal when an expansion team comes in. And look, expansion teams in Major League Soccer have the advantage of building a brand and building excitement from the ground up in a league that exists and no one's questioning whether it's going to be there the next day. You look at the divide between the 96 teams and even sort of those secondary expansion teams that lead into maybe TFC is when it started to change in 2007. That whole first year or prior to that it's different. Like, they might as well have been in a completely different sport as much as comparison that they have right now in terms of off the field launches. So, the fact that Cincinnati is doing this is wonderful for the market, and it's surprising because no one saw Cincinnati coming even 3 or 4 years ago. But now that they're here, it all makes sense. It's wonderful for them, but at the same time, it's ceasing to be, whoa, look at that. Now it's like, oh, okay, that's what you'd expect, because that's what is expected out of a new market in Major League Soccer. And this is a market that's coming in with an established fan base, so you'd especially expect it in this case. What kind of, I think that the first signing with Adi coming in, as I said the other day, I think that sort of indicates you to what kind of team we're going to be looking at here. I think they're going to try and build a very kind of domestic focused team based on that signing, like MLS experienced. I'm not sure, they have 25,000 season tickets. I don't know what the financials beyond that are. I think they might not launch quite at the Atlanta level of spending, more closer to the Minnesota level of spending, but they have been successful at the USL level in terms of putting the product on the pitch. So maybe they can be smart enough to launch this pretty successfully, but it's got to be a lot of pressure to be an expansion team right now. If you don't start like with a team that's already a contender, then you're a failure, basically. Like, God help Nashville when they come in if they don't know what they're doing.
LAFC in Atlanta has really changed the game when it comes to expansion teams, and that's where I want to finish the show, with Atlanta. We haven't talked about this last week, of course. We were pre-recorded shows, but there's been a story that's quite interesting and fascinating with Ezequiel Barco's 3-match internal ban by Tata Martino for behavior problems, for trying to pull off a John Terry in simple terms. Didn't really quite make it, but allegedly he made some advances to someone he shouldn't have, and now he's paying the price for it. And I kind of like Tata Martino's answer when he was asked the question again yesterday. He's like, win is important, but is winning more important than trying to install a culture, a team culture, a way to do things the Atlanta way that he was talking about, which means more than just the results on the pitch. It's the lifestyle. And that word means a lot. The lifestyle of a player. The lifestyle of a player versus his teammates. The lifestyle of a player versus behavior in general. And Tata Martino saying, look, those means more to me than winning. It's not just about winning. I have other players that can play that I have full confidence in. It doesn't matter who the opponents are either. If I feel I need to ban a player for certain reasons, this trumps the winning reason. And I kind of can get behind that, because doing this, the rest of the locker room looks at you like, well, okay, if he does something wrong and he gets still banned and suspended by the team, well, I got to get my ducks in a row too. And I think there's something to it to create that team aspect that we have seen be successful in Major League Soccer. Look at Portland, Red Bulls over the last few years, which some of them had superstars, but not top A1 superstars. With the team attitude and commitment between the teammates, they were able to achieve great things. And I do feel that Atlanta, their vision for the future is surrounded, it's around that. It's around the team aspect, not just the superstars, not just Yusef Martinez, not just Miguel Almiron, but about how those players become a team and play together and respect each other. And I think this can go a long way.
putting this real quickly aside before we get in, I continue on my thoughts. Is yes, Toronto fans, there is a question to be had about what he thinks about spitting incidences and whether or not he's going to hold Alderons the same sort of sort of quality of life expectations that he is with this young man here. But that said, I think this better speaks to off-the-field incidences and what we're seeing across the board in sports nowadays. And a much serious incident here in Toronto with the Roberto Antuno, the pitcher that is accused of domestically assaulting his live-in girlfriend, wife, I guess, probably in terms of legally speaking, earlier this spring. Now, this is a much serious incident, than hitting on someone's wife, but nonetheless, it sort of speaks to the same sort of character quality off the field stuff. And I think that it's refreshing to see in across sports right now, you're seeing a much greater reaction to that stuff, a much less sort of boys will be boys kind of thing. And I think that's what we've seen a few years ago. Like if this had happened a few years ago, they would have pulled them both in the same room and said, don't step out on your buddy. That was bad, and they would have left it at that, and you two work it out, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Boys will be boys. Whereas now they're saying, well, no, because there's an harassment aspect to this, and this just isn't appropriate. In case of the Asuna stuff, that we're seeing a massive pushback in terms of Houston accepting this player onto the team, and a lot of expectations of how that's going to go down from here. So society is shifting when it comes to this off-the-field stuff. So I think that's refreshing and good. And in this particular case, Atlanta should be applauded for how they've handled this.
And what I liked about Tata Martino's answer is it doesn't matter who the opponent is. Like, I'm not going to delay a suspension because I'm playing 3 good teams. No, if this needs to happen, it's going to happen now. I'm going to ban him now. I'm going to suspend him now. And at the end of the day, we'll be better for it in the long run. And Barco's role next year will be instrumental. Because let's face it, they bought him for $50 million to bring him in, not just to be this year's second option if Miggy Almiron gets sold. And the more we hear Tata Martino talk, and it was the same press conference yesterday, he's not expecting Miggy Almiron to be sold this year because they're going after the Supporters' Shield and they're going after MLS Cup. But next year, there's a very good chance that in the offseason between 2018 and 2019, Miggy Almiron moves to a good team, probably in Europe, probably in Spain, probably Madrid. That's going to need to be seen, but it will make a lot of sense. And you need to prepare the post-Almiron days. And Barco's going to be that key piece. And you kind of want to instill discipline right now when you can still afford not to play him.
Well, no, fair enough. Yeah, exactly. And, this spitting's a bit different because it happened on the field. And he might argue that if the referee didn't see that, then, who is he to do that? Off the field stuff's a little different. But it does, what you just said sort of speaks to maybe there is a consideration. And would the absolute key player on the team get the same treatment? And that's the only question you really should have about this. But, this is a significant player on this team. This is not, the backup left back here we're talking about, right? So that I think that there is a good indication that he would have would have done the same thing had it been Alderone or Martinez or whatever, right? So you'd hope that, and I think that there's no proof that he wouldn't. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt in this particular case.
And speaking of Almiron, you mentioned the spitting incident in the Toronto game on Saturday. Disco, MLS Disciplinary Committee, will send an email later on today or tomorrow with any ramifications of the weekend. So we'll see if after the fact there's repercussion for that alleged spitting incident. Well, it's not alleged. It was seen on TV and other places, but still alleged until he is found guilty. So we'll see if there's any ramifications from this incident that happened versus Toronto last Saturday in Atlanta. As always, you can follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow with more on our favorite sport, more on the beautiful game, live at probably 10 a.m. tomorrow, unless otherwise mentioned on our social media. So make sure you follow at Soccer Today SPN to always be in the know when it comes to our live shows. And as the tradition is, until tomorrow, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.